If you've seen almost any of my DLC videos thus far, you know that I didn't think very highly of it. Overall, I found it a disappointing experience, but that's not to say that it doesn't have some highlights that should be praised. So I'm making this video to point out some of those things. Do comment below some of your favorite things that the DLC did, regardless of what I and the rest of the community thought of them. I welcome differing opinions as long as you're respectful. So the first thing I want to point out right off the bat, because it's one of the first things I found, is the new weapon classes. Save for Bloodborne, which just generally has every weapon be sort of unique, besides maybe a couple of occasions. I don't know that there's been a DLC that's introduced a straight up new weapon class so far. Most of them were just based off what already was there. So imagine my wonder when I found the backhand blades, which, oh my god, that fluidity of the moveset in that one is amazing. The fact that you can go from a running attack to just kind of seamlessly go back into the running animation, I thought was phenomenal. A lot of the weapon classes are really cool. The backhand blades are my favorite, alongside the light greatsword, which I haven't got to try out much yet, but I do want to make a whole build based off of that. That one also has a very fluid movement that I really appreciate. I think these two in particular, not only do they look really cool and have a lot of cool new styles of moves, but they also do feel more fluid than almost everything else, I would say. Because admittedly, a lot of the weapons in the Souls games do just have like the very standard chains and animations and stuff that feel kind of standard at this point. And those feel like they break the mold a little bit, at the very least. Where you can combo a lot of things together that maybe normally you wouldn't be able to. Definitely has a very Bloodborne feel to it because of that as well. A few others that I would like to note as well are the throwing weapons. Definitely seem fun, haven't gotten a chance to mess with them too much. Great Katana, I didn't think I would like as much as I did. And they're definitely not at the top of the list for me. To me, it kind of felt like a Dark Souls 2 weapon, which I'm not a fan of Dark Souls 2 really, so that was kind of like, But I threw down a build that kind of felt like it would fit, a PvP build. I made a video out of that too if you want to watch that. And I liked it a lot more than I thought, honestly. I'm kind of glad I did try it out. It's not my favorite class, but I fit that particular build, and I had fun with it, so no comments here. The Beast Claws also look fun. I might have to try that as well at some point. Not a priority one, I would say, but that also looked kind of fun to me. The rest are nice as well, though, don't get me wrong. Like all the kickboxing moveset and stuff from some of those. Looks fun. Maybe not really my cup of tea personally, but I know a lot of people do enjoy this too, so. I would have loved to put in here as well, like the spells and Ashes of War. I would say for me, those seem like more of a mixed bag overall, so I don't have much to say about them yet. I've heard some are really strong, I have heard some are really not strong. But you know, hopefully those that need the buff and need the nerf will get there eventually. But for me personally, not necessarily the highlight. I definitely think the weapons are the coolest part. And that's probably a pretty, universal opinion, I think. The second thing I want to talk about is the area visual design. While I didn't love a lot of the ways that the gameplay / level design of a lot of these areas worked out to be, they did indeed look very beautiful. And I could not imagine how much work it took to put into this. It's just unfortunate that for whatever reason, be it time limits or maybe a lot of these being optional, kind of made them not put as much effort into it. Whenever I critique this DLC and everything in it, I'm never critiquing like the people actually doing the work because, I'm sure that's a very thankless job in a lot of situations. To me, it's more so like the vision of the DLC or the design choices, maybe design by committee aspects of it, didn't land for me. But as I said before in a prior video, despite how kind of lackluster the Jagged Peak was, gameplay-wise, it looks amazing. It is among the most beautiful areas I've ever seen in these games, maybe just overall. It definitely had a big atmosphere that I was really into. I'm definitely a sucker for tinting the sky red and stuff like that. Even Caleb did that for me a lot. But adding the lightning and kind of the howling winds all over the place, especially as you get closer to the peak, that really did for me. It's just unfortunate that not a lot of consideration was put into the gameplay of it. They really just reused a bunch of base game bosses essentially before Pale, which is sad, but oh well. But yeah, no, that was a highlight for me, and whenever I saw it in a distance, I wanted to go there immediately. And I did go there pretty much day 2. Another area that I found really good was the Ancient Ruins of Rao, the top part. I've also said this before, but it really reminds me of the depictions of Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is definitely an aesthetic I wish was used more. It's definitely very unique. So the area was breathtaking to look at. The Finger Ruins also look great. They look very mystical. I would say those were a little underwhelming once you realize, well, first of all, there's 2 of them. Second of all, you only get an item from each of them once you get there. I think the better choice would have been to simply have one and make that one be the gate to Matir and stuff like that. Or to like the lower area, whatever it might be. Because I think things like, okay, So one thing I would say is that when it comes to like empty areas that are more so for grandiose locations with not much to them, just something that's supposed to feel important, I think they could have done the finger runes well. I actually didn't have much complaints on it when I first saw it, and even once I explored all of it, realizing there's not much to it, it could definitely been a little more concise. But I think the visuals of it and the very obvious lore that there could be to them could have been a good contrast and make it stand out more for that reason. But the fact that they use two of them and it kind of becomes a long-winded quest line to get to a boss or whatever reward you want from it, it doesn't even play that well in replay and stuff. So I would have definitely condensed it to one area. And it could be locked out from the beginning. Maybe you could have met Ymir the same way to get it unlocked. Maybe the progression of the questline wouldn't have been as, I don't know, as stretched out to make it a kind of storyline or whatever. But either way, it does look really cool. Cerulean Coast, it looked beautiful as well. Actually, have seen a lot of people say that they thought it was very empty. I think it's fine. I think it would have been better if it did have like maybe 1 or 2 bosses that were actually noteworthy in here. Like I know it leads to the Stone Coffin area, which is noteworthy. But they should have had something here that wasn't Ghost Flame Dragon or a Demi-Human Queen, you know. But undoubtedly looks stunning. Can't deny that. I have more issues with the grave area, the red one. That one is definitely empty. And aesthetically, it didn't do it as much for me as the blue one. Abyssal Woods, aesthetically also was very eerie and stuff. Definitely did the job. Of course, as far as this gameplay is concerned, that's another story. The Shadowkeep looked amazing. Also thought the game design there was a little lacking. Maybe still among the better in the game, or the DLC rather. But I do like the aesthetic of this black castle just, sticking out of the ground. It feels very intrusive to the nature because Skyward Altus looks very pretty and natural and stuff. And there's just this giant castle foreboding above it that definitely doesn't feel like it should belong there. And it kind of reflects a lot of what Mesmer is, Just came to this land and decimated almost all of it, So the aesthetic of it is great. The Stone Coffin Fissure, definitely a really cool descent into it. I really like that area. Certainly enjoyed it a lot more than a lot of the open world segments of it. And of course the Shaman Village, definitely a very unexpected moment. And it looks very pretty, for sure. Anything that I mentioned here I just thought was fine at best. Admittedly, a lot of the open world segments were kind of meh. The Graveside Plain was a little bland for me. Skyward Altus looks good, but maybe not super original, I suppose, given there is the Altus Plateau. Like, I know that's supposed to be the intentional parallel, but it doesn't look bad. I'm not saying this bad or anything. But these that I mentioned before, the Graveside Plain and all, are my highlights, personally. The third thing I want to look at is the NPCs and just the general theming of this. I was very surprised when I just kind of started picking up on this little aspect. There is an overall theme of revenge in this DLC. And I think overall that's one of the best aspects of the DLCs oftentimes. Just the fact that there are themes to them that I can have more concisely focused on. Like there are themes in the base games as well. But for say Old Hunters, I want to say a theme for that one is guilt and repercussions for sins of the past. And how a lot of characters deal with it. Ashes of Arendelle and maybe also the Ring City is kind of based on a safe haven for the outcast. But it feels even more prominent in this DLC just due to the fact that you can see it and take part on it in real time, as opposed to the other ones, which are kind of either in the past or maybe something to the future. But the overall storytelling and theming of this was really good. And I do like the idea that like the spell that Mikula had over people breaking with the Great Rune actually affects the NPCs, pretty much all of them. Was a very nice touch. Like, it felt like there's some story going on, even if it was very small detail and stuff. But yeah, looking at them individually, the Horn Scent is an obvious point to the revenge theme. He's just hell-bent on getting revenge on Mesmer. Same thing with Egon, which is, as people have pointed out, a Moby Dick inspired, most likely. Those two are the most obvious examples of it. Even being able to summon them to fight their respective arch-nemesis. And it tackles the subject kind of maturely as well. Like, if you follow through the Hornsent questline, it does imply that revenge is just a very all-consuming part of life. So once his target is slain, he goes elsewhere. Or if his target is taken away from him, he just loses all meaning, which is basically the two extremes of it that kind of show that it's not a good thing to chase, I guess, in my opinion. And then Egon, I mean, I guess that's a different side of it where, but he was kind of already on that store anyway. So, there's that aspect to it too. There's also more low-key ways that they express it too. Like Ymir, once you kill Matir, kind of wants to revenge on you, which is definitely another parallel you can get to that. And also the very low-key one for America, which I didn't really pick up on, but I have been seeing some people like break down the idea that the reason America did all the shit she did is as revenge to the Hornsent themselves. Well, I guess they were the ones who slaughtered the shaman village or something. I don't specifically remember any item or anything describing to that. If there's something I missed, do let me know, because yeah, I don't know specifically how people came to that conclusion via items, if there is. Or that's just a very underlying implication, I suppose. Now, I do remember Letta saying something akin to, like, the Hornsent aren't saints. They did do some fucked up shit in the past. And I guess that could be where they're coming from. I'm not really sure. The 14th to discuss is the Catacomb revamp. I really appreciated that they brought back the Catacomb aspect, but fine-tuned it, cut out some of the stuff that maybe didn't work, like the lever door mechanic where you have to pull the lever to open that door to the boss. It's not like that's that bad of a setup, but doing it over and over again for every single Catacomb in the base game didn't really age well. Obviously, it was inspired by Bloodborne's challenge dungeon system, but at the very least, dungeons in that one have a very particular purpose, and very optional in the sense that you don't need the rewards from inside dungeons to beat the game or anything of the sort. And it's not like you need to beat the Catacombs to beat Elden Ring, but they didn't make you want to explore them, I guess is what I'm saying. Especially when they got to redo that format every time. I think I explored them all in roughly the order the game would want to. I did Fog Rift first. They introduced the spike ceilings, which are really cool. Very well telegraphed with the blood in front of them before you see them for the first time. Not only that, but they also add verticality to it whenever you find a little ledge that can get you on top of the ceiling things. And there's a lot of hidden secrets all over the catacombs they can find if you decide to ride those, which is a nice detail. And I think the Death Knights were a cool boss to top off. Like, I think they're among the better ones in the like lesser bosses catalog. They're one of the better enemies. And they weren't too spammed too. I think they're just the two of them. The Scorpion one kept the spike ceilings, but they also added a Deathlight mechanic, which is definitely very nice. I'm glad that they are kind of playing with a lot of the unused status elements in the base game, because these are very much restricted to very particular situations. But having a dungeon based off Deathlight, really cool. And the way they did it was also really cool. It had like a kind of Brain of Mensis kind of feel to it, or I guess that one tower in Liurnia, where just being in vicinity of it is enough to get you. But you can play to it. You can add resistances. You can keep your cure items on you. It's by no means a really hard thing to get through, but it does add tension to the dungeon that's very nice. I did like the ones that bounce back and forth too. It also would have been cool if they tracked you though. If they saw you, they kind of just stayed at you, but I could see that being a little messed up if you get caught in a weird spot. Unfortunately, not all are as good. I thought the Dark Light Catacomb was more lacking. The light gimmick is maybe less impressive or less interesting than the other ones. Not to mention when you get to that basement floor, I guess, with the giant imp, which is like, that's a little much, in my opinion. And I wouldn't have much problems with it if it wasn't the only one that was mandatory to unlock a whole different area. Like, the fact that you need to get through here to get to the abyss is like, oh gosh. Not the best feeling, and definitely the weakest, I think, of all the catacombs, but I mean, hey, 2 out of 3, I'll take that. That's definitely more hits than in the base game, where I think only like 2 or 3 are like truly noteworthy and interesting, and the rest are just kind of very copy-paste all overall. And lastly, perhaps a little predictable, but the music is very good. I think the highlights for me were the Lord of Frenzied Flame, Midra's theme obviously. This song to me just sounds like Bloodborne Reborn, you know? And it made me realize how much I actually missed that kind of specific type of soundtrack. I don't know what it is about it, but it just gives me chills every time. And obviously it is by the same 2 composers, so it makes sense that they could pull this out. It's just that obviously prior to this area, it didn't really demand a track like this specifically. Like Dark Souls and Elden Ring have their own vibe to them. So yeah, I was very happy to hear this. There's some segments of the Promised Consort that are pretty hype. Like this one in particular always gets me pumped. I do also like the vocalizations in Phase 2 with like the singular singer as opposed to the choir. Really cool stuff. Maybe overall not my favorite, but it is pretty good. Those United in Common Cause goes a lot harder than it needs to. Like, what the heck? It's one that plays whenever you're fighting Letta and her allies And yeah, it's such a good track overall. Definitely kept my sanity a little bit during that fight when I was struggling through it. Build the Dread was very good as well. Maybe it doesn't stick out in my head as much, but it fits the song. It has almost its own vibe to it, which, now that I think about it, it might actually have a kind of like a sea journey kind of vibe to it. Like a tumultuous moment at sea or something. I don't know what it is about it. Something about that first note that hits really gets that feeling to me. And given the Moby Dick inspiration, I mean, hey, that could have been something I had in mind. Maybe it's just a lot of the same instruments they use in that kind of soundtrack or whatever. Mesmer the Impaler is pretty good as well. I do like the part that plays in his intro cutscene whenever we first meet him. I like the beginning of Mateer's song a lot, but it does evolve into noise later on, which fits the atmosphere, but maybe doesn't make the greatest song to listen to, you know, on its own. As for maybe overall tracks that aren't titled per se, the Stone Coffin music was really, really good. It added a melancholy to the area that was very appreciated, I thought. And similarly for the Shaman Village, it's obviously really good. I appreciated that there's just a very low-key track there playing the reminiscences to the opening song or whatever. And just in general, the area is a nice little somber place where there's not even any enemies or anything to distract you. It's just there, and I appreciate it for it. In truth, there's no weak tracks, as I can recall, though it's certainly maybe not to some people's taste. So that's fine, honestly. But overall, they did a good job with this, and pretty much the rest of the things I've mentioned so far. Just to close this video off, I was considering naming the bosses that I did like in here, but I decided I should come up with some specific things that I think overall they did well. Instead, I did something that's more fun overall, a tier list of the DLC bosses. But because that's not really the kind of content I want to post in my channel at the moment, I'll be making it a membership video. So if you think that's something you'd like to watch, consider joining. It will piss you off. Lamenter, oh baby, this guy. I'm debating between Masterpiece and Actively Like Fighting. It is only $2 US, and you can cancel anytime you wish. I'll make an attempt to make more specific content for that too. And you get a shout out at the end of every video. So thanks to all the members that I have so far. And that is all for the video. Coming up should be the Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc. callbacks in Shadow of the Erdtree. So if you've seen my prior series, where Elden Ring calls back to the previous games, that's going to happen now for the DLC, or at the very least soon. If you want to hear more overall thoughts of what I think of the DLC, or maybe even the base game, I do have a whole playlist of things that I think are worth looking at. And if you think you like this video or any of those, do consider subscribing. I would appreciate it. But yeah, let me know some things you liked in the DLC as well. But until next time, see you around everyone. Bye bye.